India has a truly massive coastline. We're talking over 7,500 kilometers long. It's a source of life, it's a source of livelihood for millions, and it's home to some incredible biodiversity. But, it's also under enormous pressure. So, the big question is, how do we protect it? Well, let's dive into the powerful laws that were designed to be the shield for India's shores and see how they're actually holding up. And we're going to start right here with this incredibly powerful statement from India's Supreme Court. I mean, it just cuts right to the heart of the whole issue, doesn't it? Having laws in the books is one thing, but making sure they're followed, that's the real battle. This quote really sets the stage for everything we're about to cover: the rules, the challenges, and that ongoing fight to protect our coasts. But before we get into the specifics of any one rule, we have to start at the very, very top. Why do these laws even exist in the first place? While the answer isn't just in some policy paper, it's written deep within the Constitution of India itself. What's so amazing is that the Constitution sets up this dual responsibility. It's not just the government's job. Article 51A(g) makes it a fundamental duty for every single citizen. Just think about that for a second. It's a shared mission. It makes environmental protection part of the very fabric of being a citizen of the nation. Okay, so when we talk about coastal protection, how far out to sea does that protection actually go? Because India's authority doesn't just stop at the sand, Let's take a look at how the law draws these crucial, invisible lines out in the water. The Maritime Zones Act of 1976 lays this all out really clearly. The easiest way to think about it is in layers, moving away from the shore. First, you've got the territorial waters. That's basically an extension of India's land, so we have full sovereignty there. Next is the contiguous zone, which kind of acts as a buffer for policing things like customs and security. Then you get to the big one, the vast exclusive economic zone, or EEZ, where India gets exclusive rights to all the natural resources. And beyond that, well, that's the open seas, free for all. Let's just pause on that number for a second. 200 nautical miles. That's about 370 kilometers. This exclusive economic zone gives India the rights to a huge, huge area of the ocean. And that's an enormous economic asset for sure, but it also comes with an incredible environmental responsibility to manage it all sustainably. So we've looked out at the sea. Now let's bring our focus back to the most vulnerable area of all, the coastline itself, that critical zone where the land and the water meet. This is where the most important set of rules, the Coastal Regulation Zone, or CRZ, comes into play. So what exactly is the CRZ? Simply put, it's a protected buffer zone. The law defines it as the area that stretches 500 meters inland, starting from the high tide line. This one simple rule, established way back in 1991, is the main legal tool we have to prevent the kind of unchecked development that can completely destroy our coastal ecosystems. So what are the big no-nos in this zone? Well, the law is very specific about prohibiting the most destructive activities. You can't just set up new industries, you can't dump city waste, you can't mine sand, and you definitely can't do anything that fundamentally messes with the natural landscape. It's all about preventing that irreversible damage, like pollution and erosion. But, and this is really important, the CRZ isn't a total ban on everything. The law is actually pretty smart. It recognizes that people live here, people work here, so it carves out exceptions for things like traditional fishing, for essential infrastructure like pipelines, and even for manually collecting groundwater for local communities in a specific part of the zone. It's a much more nuanced approach than you might think. All right, rules are just words on paper until they're actually tested, right? So now let's look at how these laws have been interpreted and enforced in some of the country's most important environmental court cases. This is where it gets really interesting. Okay, this one is famous. It's known as the aquaculture case. What was happening was that commercial shrimp farms were causing massive, massive damage. They were wiping out precious mangroves and contaminating drinking water. The Supreme Court came down hard. It completely banned the industry in the CRZ and applied the polluter pays principle, which basically means the industry had to foot the bill for the damage it caused. This was a landmark victory for coastal protection. But it's not always such a clear-cut win for environmental protection. Take the Konkan Railway case, for example. A new major rail line was being challenged because of environmental fears. But this time, the court saw it differently. It ruled that a huge public project like this couldn't be stopped by what it called imaginary apprehensions, which effectively prioritized national development in this specific instance. And looking at these two cases side by side perfectly illustrates the central tension here. It's this constant balancing act at the very heart of environmental law. On one hand, you have the absolute critical need to protect our ecosystems. But on the other hand, you have the very real demands of a developing nation. The courts are constantly walking this tightrope. Now, this final case is incredibly important. Even though it's about a lake and not the coast, the principle it established is universal. Nainital Lake was literally being choked to death by pollution and illegal construction. The Supreme Court's verdict here was groundbreaking. It ruled that the right to a healthy environment isn't just a nice-to-have, it is an inseparable part of the fundamental right to life itself, a total game-changer. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground, from constitutional duties all the way to landmark court cases. So let's just take a moment and boil it all down to the absolute key points that you really need to remember. All right, here's your quick recap. If you only take away 5 things from this, make it these. 1. Remember the 500-meter CRZ buffer zone. 2. Remember the vast 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. 3. The Jagannath case, which used the polluter pays principle to stop that destructive shrimp farming. And finally, and maybe most crucially, remember the Nainital Lake case, which elevated a clean environment to a fundamental human right. And that brings us right back to the big final question. We have the laws, we have the court precedents, we even have the constitutional duties. But the pressure on our coasts, from development, from pollution, from climate change, it's only growing. So the question really remains for all of us to think about, has India truly found a right balance?